Hello, I am Sandhya Vijayan. I will be dealing with one of your paper, that is international law. The syllabus I will be covering will be definitely under Bharatiyar University, that is the syllabus provided to be taken by me. And as a disclaimer, first I will tell, this is not a authority session over international law. This is completely upon the Bharatiyar syllabus, and the modules and the sessions will be planned accordingly. And your syllabus as per the university is divided into 7 modules. We will start with Introduction to International Law. There we will start with what is law, and we will reach how a law to an international law. And the second module, we will be dealing with the ground for the sources of international law. That is, what are the legal concepts that will be behind international law. That is the thoughts, sociology behind a law, politics behind a law, and everything. And in third session, we will be dealing with sources of international law. That is how an international law is created. That is the customary practices, conventions, treaties, etc. And in the fourth module, we will be dealing with the subjects of international law. That is the area that is really covered by the international law, who all are dealt with under the international law. And in the fifth module, we will be dealing with the treaties, exclusively with the treaties, how a treaty is concluded, how a treaty is made, how it is violated, what will be the effects of violation, and etc. And in the sixth module, we will be dealing with the definite, specific area of international law, that is international human rights law, that will be centering. And our concluding session will be on international criminal law, that is criminal trials and everything, warfare and everything we will be dealing with. First, we will start with our first module. In the first module, we will be starting with what is law and the origin of international legal order, its nature, how from an international legal order, how an international law is originated, and why international law is called as a unique law, and what are the general legal principles that are behind an international law. Then, what do you mean by country of origin? So, let us start with what is law. Law is essential, as you know, law is essential in our daily life. Every seconds, every moments of our life is connected with law. So, for example, while we are coming to college from our home, if we confront with some accident or anything, if you are driving a car and some transport vehicle, anything bit over your car, and is it possible that you just get down of the car and get hold of that person and beat him? Or if a neighbor of yours does some negligence, some trespass over your property, is it possible that you trespass over his land and beat him? Or what will you do? There arises the need of law. That is the systematic way why a society, how a society is arranged. We are not supposed to, that is what everybody says, we are not supposed to take law in hands. That is a society, whenever there is a society, there will be law. A society will be well organized by the principles of rules, laws and regulations. So, we can define law. Law is a set of rules. It is enforced by the courts which regulate the government of the state and govern the relationship between the state and its citizens and between one citizen and another. That is what I told you. If there is an accident happens on our way, we are supposed to call police, we are supposed to record what has happened in our movement to this police, and we will go, as far as India is concerned, we will go as per what is laid down in Motor Vehicles Act. And for example, if you have entered into a trade relation with a person, or you have imported some products, and if some intricacies, some conflict arise between you and your partner, what will you do? There are specific clause for every sphere of our life, and it is law. It can be defined as a set of rules that will regulate the conditions, that will regulate the day-to-day affairs. It is a set of rules. That is the path we have to go. It is enforceable by courts. Whatever the rule is there, if somebody violates, if there is a rule that I can't trespass upon a property, another's property. Trespass means just entering upon the property without that person's consent. And if I violate that, there's a rule that one should not trespass on others' property. And if I violate that, it is enforceable by court. That means if somebody violates that law, we can seek redressal before a court, before a machinery. It will regulate the government of the state. That is, these all are done by the state, and it will be governed by a machinery, and it will govern the relationship between the state. It will govern two types of relation. That it will govern the relation between individual from one path and the state, and also between the individuals. That is what is law. So it's a rule. It's a set of rules that is enforceable by courts, and it will gives redressal to the individuals and the state, and it will settle the disputes between individuals and individual and state. And one of the points that we have to note when we take into law into consideration is that whenever somebody breaks the system, it's a law, and there is a method how that person, that violated person, is to be punished. And there is a method how the aggrieved person, that is the person who has been aggrieved by that violation, he has to go before the law and seek the redressal. At the same time, the law, as I told you earlier, the law is not one that seeks the redressal or that will settle the disputes between individuals. It will seek also the disputes between one individual and the government also. Or else it's a state, government and the state. And if the state is providing us a relief, a right, and it is violated, it is infringed, there is a cause that is provided under law to go before a court of law against the state itself, against the government also. As far as India is concerned, if our constitution has guaranteed us several fundamental rights. And if one of the fundamental rights that is guaranteed by our constitution is violated, what will happen? We have got the forum, that is high courts and supreme courts, where we can file writs against the government and seek redressal. At the same time, if we are not getting any benefit and one of our human rights, right to life, etc. are violated, and to the apex level after Supreme Court, if India is a party to any international treaties, we can approach the international forums also. That is the importance of law. Then next point is rule of law. Almost all the democratic countries in the world follows the principle of rule of law. That is, everything will be controlled by law. Rule is not by the king, it is by the law. That is, if anything happens, the law will bring, that is, the rule of law applies to everyone in the society and is intended to strike a balance between the individual freedoms and the needs of the society. We have got several freedoms, and what the rule of law says that our freedom should not violate the freedom of the others. Every freedom, every right that is afforded by a constitution of a country, that will be limited by others' freedom. And the rule of law, that is the fundamental legal principles that states that it applies equally to every persons. That is, all under law are treated equally. There is no law for rich people, there is no separate law for poor people. Under constitution, under the rule of law, everybody is treated equally under law, and no one is treated above law. Nobody is, even if government, ruler or whoever it is, nobody will be treated above the law. And in that sense, when we take into consideration nobody is above the law, nobody means government also. That is striking a balance between the rights of one person and right of another. Under law, government or a state will be treated as an entity. It has got certain rights just like individuals, and just like individual obligations, the state has also got obligations. As far as India is concerned, obligations that is on the part of the state is contained in part 4 of our constitution, that is directive principles of state policy. That's it, that part 4 of Indian constitution will say what is the obligation, what we expect from government and what the government is expected to provide us. That is regarding rule of law. Then we have to, I told you that law is a set of rules that is made for the fair governance of a society. And the law, it can be divided on area base on which it affects. The law can be divided into public law, private law, international law and national law. When we take into public law, public law is the law, is a part of law that governs the relationship between individuals and the state. I told you there is main important two parts of law, that is the classification of law is public law and private law. When we take into public law, the governing part, it governs the relation between the individuals and the state. One part there will be individual and one part there will be the state. And this public law can again be subdivided into constitutional law, criminal law, administrative law, municipal law and international law. Constitutional law. Constitutional law is the law that defines the rights of individuals in a state, in a society, what all rights are provided under a constitution. Taking into Indian constitution, it contains 448 articles, 25 parts. And in that 448 articles, part 3 of Indian constitution, it will give us some fundamental rights. That is the rights that can be availed by a citizen of a country. It will regulate the functioning of the organs of the government. It will also says how a government, part 3 of the Indian constitution says what all fundamental rights a citizen can enjoy. And part 4 will deal directive principles, that is how a government is to be ruled and what all measures government has to be take, what are the duties of the government, what are the functions of a cabinet, etc. And it will rule the functioning of the organs of the government, governmental organs, how they have to function. It will be dealt with under the constitutional law. And we will take, and the second part, that is the criminal law. Criminal law defines, that is the criminal law comes under the subdivision of public law. And criminal law, it will defines various offences. There are several offences that is statute prescribed. In India, that will be Indian Penal Code, and the procedure, Indian Penal Code, it will lay down several types of offences. Murder, attempt to murder, culpable homicide, trespass, negligence, everything. And the procedure, how that is to be dealt with, that will be dealt with under Criminal Procedure Code. And next subdivision of public law is administrative law. Administrative law, it is describing the agencies of the government. how agencies of the government will function. What are the rules that is to be followed by the agencies of the government in the administration of justice? That is like rules of fair trial, audio alteram partem. That is, everybody should be heard. No one should be unheard. It's just like that principles that will be followed in administrative law. And the next division is municipal law. Municipal law means that is local rules that is ordered for a particular region. Local rules that is for a specific period that is ordered by the municipal area or the specific region that will be followed in the municipal law. And next come international law. International law means that dealing with the relation between the nations. That is against the domestic law. Domestic law means that is the rule that is prevailing in a country. That is the domestic law, and where the domestic law ends, there starts the international law. That is, for controlling a country there will be a domestic law, and the relation between the two nations, that say for example the relation between India and US, that will be governed by the international law. So these are the subdivision for public law. So as I told you, law, it is a set of rules, and basically when we take into the area of operation, we can divide law into public law and private law. And in public law, there is a subdivision of laws, that is constitutional law, criminal law, administrative law, municipal law and international law. When we take into consideration the international law, it will carry on the relations between the nations. And parallel to public law, there is private law. So, with relation to the subject, that is area that it is governing, law can be divided into public law and private law. We have completed what is public law. And now we will be dealing with private law. What is private law? Private law, it is concerned with matters that affect the rights and duties of individual among themselves. Public law, in public law, the subject was state and individual. And as far as private law is concerned, the subject will be the individuals themselves. That is, between whatever disputes, whatever matters that will be affecting between the individuals will be taken into consideration in the private law. Say for example, if you are throwing some waste into another's property, that will be dealt with under private law. If there is an agreement between you and your partner in a business, and your partner or you violates any of the conditions in the agreement, that will be dealt with under the private law. And this private law is also known as civil law. Then just as public law, this private law also got some branches, some subdivisions. They are law of contracts, law of torts and law of property. As far as law of contract is concerned, what is a contract? Contract means an agreement enforceable by law. That is a simple definition for contract. That is governing the rights and obligation of those entering into contract. When we make, what is the starting point of a contract? Offer. If I make an offer to you that I shall sell out my car to you for an amount of rupees 1 lakh. There I am making an offer. And if you accept that offer, if you agree to that proposal that I shall purchase your car for that amount that is you have prescribed, that is 1 lakh, it will be a binding agreement. And when it gets the enforceability of law, that agreement will become a contract. So there will be an offer, there will be an acceptance, and there will be an agreement. It will first conclude into a promise, and promise will become an agreement, and agreement with enforceability will enter into a contract. And when two persons enter into a contract, there are certain obligations, rights that is available to one person and certain obligation that is available to another person. when I am availing some rights, I am also availing some obligation also. And if I infringe, I violate any of the rights, any of the condition that is prescribed under the conditions of that agreement, the other party has every opportunity to go before the court of law. And these all conditions, these all things that is comes in under the contract or an agreement will be governed under the private law under the subheading of contract law. Now, tort law. Tort means that is law, private law concerning that part of wrong done by another. That is rights and obligations and remedies provided to someone who has been wronged by another individual. That is, I told you, if I trespass upon others' property, trespass means entering upon others' property without the consent of the person. So, like that laws, if in that sense I am doing some wrong to the other person, that will be if I am taking in hire some other's property or any vehicle or anything like that, and I negligently drive that vehicle and commits any damage to that property, that will also be dealt with under the tort law. That is something wrong done to another individual. Next subdivision of private law is property law. That is, that governs whatever dealing with the property. That is, it will be the sale, it will be the ownership, it will be the transfer, it will be the tenant issues. If I hire a property and there arise any problems, that also will be dealt under the property law. Then next part is succession law. Succession law means transferring the estate of another person. That is succession law. And if we are, next part is family law. That is domestic related issues between the married peoples or between the father, son and etc. That will be dealt with under the family law. So, these are the subdivisions for private law. So, the private law, it is the law that affects the rights and obligations of individuals, families, business and small groups and exists to assist citizens in disputes that involve private matters. So, they are the rights and obligations of individual. They are the obligation that is existing between the individuals and their families or between the individuals in their business. Say for example, if A and B enters into a partnership business and that is to be something happens in between them, or after the business is over that the assets is to be distributed, that also everything will be dealt with under the partnership law. If two or more persons, they make any company and in winding a process and everything, something happens, that is to be dealt with under the company law. And if an agreement is concluded, that will be dealt with under the contract law. These are the subdivisions for private law. Next is, as I told you, the law, it can be classified into public law, private law. We have covered that topic, that is public law and private law. Now we are taking the international law and national law. What is national law? It governs, national law will govern the relationship between the citizens in a country. There is a limit for a national law. There is a circumference over which it cannot go. That is, it governs the relationship only between the citizens within a country. It can't cross the borders of a country. It is also known as municipal law or state law. It is a domestic law. All laws that is passed in India, as far as India is concerned, whatever law that is passed in India by our parliament, that is known as, that is ratified by a parliament or passed by our parliament, will be regarded as the national law. And in that national law also, we can divide laws into public law and private law. That is, whenever that is concerning the state and individuals or the state relations, that will be in the public law. And that is dealings, if we are concerned with the dealings of the private individuals or citizens of a country, that will comes under the private law. And next is national law. Then another point is international law. So law can be divided into private law, public law, national law and international law. What is international law? International law is a body of law which is composed of the principles and rules of conduct which states feel themselves bound to observe. They are body of law, just like what is law? As I told you, it's a set of rules, it's a body of law which is composed of the principles and rules of conduct. That is rules of conduct, how a country has to behave in a particular situation. That is rules of conduct, how a state has to behave in a particular situation, which states feel themselves bound to observe. That conduct, I am supposed to follow a particular conduct in such a situation, and that state should feel that I should observe. That international law, that is observance to that law, to that conduct, is from the treaty that the state is entered into. That the basics for this international law is like obedience to an international law or a boundness to an international law is concluded when a state signs a treaty, international treaty, and that state becomes the part of that treaty. Then he is bound. Then that state is bound by that treaty. That the treaty will be the basics for the boundedness to an international law. And this international law, it can be divided into public international law and private international law. When we simply say international law, it will be public international law. This is our area of subject that is to be dealt with, that is public international law. Public international law is the law that prevails between the states and govern mutual relationships of states inter se, particularly rules of war. It is the law that prevails between states, between sovereign states, independent states. It's not just state, it prevails. That law prevails between the states, independent sovereign states, and it governs the mutual relationship. That is, if I have got some rights if India has got some rights with it, it has also certain duties to be performed of states in the state, particularly rules of war. In the time of war, that what they have to follow. And for example, we can take the example of a nuclear proliferation treaty and everything. And when we will discuss that matter in later, that is, we will go to details of the definition of public international law in our coming sessions. And coming to private international law, private international law, it's also a body of rules that are primarily concerned with determining what systems of state law should properly be applied by our courts in cases which contain some foreign element. That is concerned with determining. The state has to determine what system of law should properly be applied. If a particular situation arises, what rule, which country's rule is to be applied in a court in a case which contains a foreign element. Foreign element means, say for example, there is a dispute between husband and wife, and if one of the party belong to a foreign country, and if their marriage has taken place in foreign country, what rule is to be followed when they have filed a petition for dissolution of marriage in Indian court? Whether if he is a person of Switzerland and they have married at US and then they have filed the petition for dissolution of dissolution of marriage in an Indian court, what law is to be applied? These cases, these situations are dealt with under private international law. So, law can be divided into public law, private law, domestic or national law, then international law. So, we have covered what is law, what is public law, what is private law, what is national or domestic law, and what is international law. That is our area of operation, that is international law. International law is the area law that operates outside a country. I told you, if we are taking a law inside a country, it will be domestic law. It will be national law. And international law, it is the law that operates outside a country. It is body of rules and norms that regulate the activities carried on outside the legal boundaries of the state. It's not applied inside the state. Disputes arising inside the states, it will be operative outside a state. And national law is one that is operating within a country. That national law will be completely national and will be particular to a region also. If we are making some laws to a particular sect of people, that will be regional law. And if it is applicable to country as a whole, it will be national law. And this international law, I told you earlier, this can be divided into public international law and private international law. This public international law is otherwise known as law of nation, and whenever we simply say international law, it will be public international law, and it is also known as law of nations. It is the law that regulates the relation, that is operating outside the countries, that is regulating the relation between the states. And private international law, which is otherwise known as law of conflicts, which is the law that regulates the relationship between individuals outside a country. Then international law, when we take together this public and private international law, this public international law can be of regional type, and this national law, that is national law, can also be a regional type. That is, if we are making any particular law for a particular state, that will be regional law. And when we take into international level, regional law for a particular, international law can also be created for a regional level. If it is applicable to all the world, whoever signed to a treaty, it is a public international law that is applicable to the all world. When it is applicable to a regional law, that is for a particular sector of the world, that is South Pacific region, Asia Pacific region, Western Europe region, that will be the regional law under public international law. And if it is operating outside a country to regulate matters, whatever they occur in the world, that is after this global warming and everything, we have entered into several treaties that is having universal application, then that will be universal law. So international law can also be regional law and universal law. When it is applicable to the world as a large, that is regarding this global warming, environmental issues and everything, it will be universal law. And if it is for a particular region, particular Asian countries, European countries, Western region, then if we are taking such types of law, that will be regional law under international law. I told you earlier, this together with this public international law, private international law, it governs the activities of the individuals. Individual doesn't mean individuals only, it is only also the corporations and other entities. It will address the questions. Mainly this private international law is other, I told you, it is also known as conflict of laws. And it will address, conflict of law will address the question mainly that which court may hear a case. I told you, in family matters, if one party is a foreigner and the marriage has consumed in another country, then and dissolution petition is filed in another country, then the court has to decide in which court the case is to be heard. And if it is to be heard in India, which law is to be applied in particular situation. And the law concerning which jurisdiction applies to the issues in the case. Which case, which law, which jurisdiction, which court, which law is to be applied in that case. That is mainly, private international law is mainly concerned not with the dispute but with the choice of law. That is, which law is to be taken to application. That is why it is known as conflict of laws. That is which law? UK law, US law, or Indian law, Switzerland law. What is to be applied? That topics that is carried by private international law include contract, marriage, divorce, jurisdiction, recognition of judgment, child adoption and abduction cases. These are the matters that is mainly covered by the private international law. So again, if we go to classification of law, that is the topic that we have covered. Law, it's a set of rules that is made for the smooth governance of a society, and with its area of operation and its relation to its subject, it can be divided into public law, private law, national law and international law. This public law can be again subdivided into constitutional law, criminal law and everything, administrative law, and private law, it can be divided, that is dealings between the private individuals. In public law, the subject will be the state, and private law, it is dealing the disputes between the individuals. Then comes a subdivision of family law, contract law, tort law and property law. And when we take into national law, it is a law that is operating within a country. Then it can also be divided into public law and private law. And international law can also be divided into public law and private law. When we simply say international law, it is public international law, and this public international law is a law. It's a law that governs the relation between the states, and we will go in detail of what is this public international law. Before going to public international law, we have to get an idea of what is a legal order. This public international law is one among the ingredient towards the international legal order. What is a legal order? Legal order simply means it's a unity of legal rules. When we take national legal order, it is a complete rules prevailing in a nation. That is the national legal order. And when we take into international legal order, that is all the legal order that is prevailing internationally. That is international legal order. International law is an international legal order. International law, it's an independent system of law existing outside the legal orders of particular state. That is, if we take into international law as a system, it will stand alone. It is independent. It doesn't have any inclines to a law of the particular land. It is an independent system of law. It has got its separate existence. It has got independent, separate existence with the laws of any other land. International legal order, it can be defined as the unity of all legal rules having legal validity in international relation between states and other international organizations. When we take any definitions, first you have to split the definitions into part, and then you will get the features of a definition. International legal order, what is it? It is the unity of all legal orders. That is, all legal orders is clubbed together. It is a unity of all legal orders, legal rules, that is systematic rules, that is body of principles having legal validity. Simple, it's not simple rules. That rules, that unity of, that clubbed rules, it must have a legal validity. That must be, that what I told you while describing contract, it must have a legal validity. That is, it should be enforceable by law. That is, if any violation occurs, that is to be redressed by law. That is its legal validity. In the international relation between states, that legal principles that is used, that valid legal principles are used only for the international relation between the states, between sovereign states, between India and Germany, between Germany and UK, between UK and USA. That is the legal validity in the international relation between the states. That is, relation that is controlled by the international legal order is the relation between the sovereign states and other international organizations. That is WTO, International Court of Justice, World Trade Organization, the UN Charter, everything. That are regarded as international organization. When we talk about international organization, that is UN, International Court of Justice, World Trade Organization, and everything that is functioning for the international peace. That all are the international organization. So, international legal order, it is when we club all the international legal rules, that rules must have the legal validity in the international relations. That will be carrying, they will be dealing with the international relations between the states. That is, independent sovereign countries and other international organization. That is, a state, the relation between one state and one international organization, between international organization and between the states. That is, there will be some issues between the WTO and USA, and like that. It will be dealing with the, just like private and public international law, the subjects of this will be the independent sovereign states and international organizations. So, the international legal order will deal with these subjects of international law, that is the states and the international organization. So, it is international legal order. What is it? It is the unity of all legal rules. It comes all, every combination of the availing all legal rules, that is prevailing internationally, having a legal validity. That is, if one is subject to an international legal order, he will be ratified that legal order. So, it will get a legal validity, that is in the international relation between the states. It will be dealing with the international relation between sovereign states and other international organization. On the other hand, national legal order, that is what I told you about is international legal order, and on the other hand, national legal order is legal unity of legal rules produced by the state organs like legislature, executive and judiciary. That is, when we take national legal order, that is all the rules that is created by the legislature, executive and the judiciary. That is, if we take our case, India as a perspective, legislature, in our country, almost all the rules are formulated by our parliament. So, whatever rules that is created by the legislature plus executive orders, that is, if collector makes any orders, governor makes any orders, that all comes under executive orders, and judiciary. If a situation arises in a state, in a particular case, that a judge cannot find any law for a particular situation. A particular situation arises, and when a judge cannot find any rule for that particular situation, what he will do? He will create a law. He will make a rule. He will pronounce a judgment under his own visions, and by lapse of time, his pronouncement, his judgment will become the rule. So, in law, the law is created by the legislature. It can be by the orders of the executive, and it can also be created by a judiciary. When we take all these three together, by the legislature, by the executive and the judiciary, that is the judge-made rule. That is, when a particular situation arises and there is no law to be applied to that situation, and judge makes his own rule, that will be regarded as judge-made law. That is the pronouncement of judiciary. And when we take all these rules, that is legislature rules, executive orders and the pronouncement of the judiciary, it will be combined in the legal rules of the national legal order. And when we take national legal order, we will club whatever released by the constitutional law, administrative law, criminal law, civil law and judicial pronouncement. That is regarding the legal order. First you have to understand what is the legal order. So what is legal order? Legal order is the unity of all the legal orders that is having a legal validity. Legal order means it is the unity of all legal rules that is having legal validity. That is the legal order. And when we take national legal order, it is the unity of legal orders that is pronounced by all the organs of the state. That is different. There are three main organs of a state. If every state will be having, when I talk about a state, it will be a country, it will be nation. When we take India case, it will be different organs of our state is legislature, executive and judiciary. That is the national legal order. That is the rules and regulations pronounced by all the three organs will be termed as national legal order. And in international legal order, international level, that legal order, it is the unity of all legal rules. We have to club every rules prevailing internationally, and that rules should be having legal validity. The first point is, that is the unity of all legal orders. And second point is, that legal orders should be having legal validity. That is enforceability by law, and it is concerning the international relation, and that relation should be between the states, in between the states or the states and the international organization. That is with regard to international legal order. Again, coming to international law, when we simply say international law, it is public international law. So in international law, we will be dealing with every body of legal rules, norms, standards that apply between the sovereign states and other entities. And other entities means companies, corporations that are legally recognized as international actors. So in international law, subjects of international law, that is to whom this international law is applicable, that the persons coming under international law will be termed as international actors. There will be sovereign states, international organizations, companies, corporations and everything. So rules, norms and standards. Standards means without any binding effect, some standards we will be expecting from other persons. So that is the standards that apply between the sovereign states. That is the legal rules, norms and standards that is apply between the sovereign states and other entities. Other entities means other organizations that are legally recognized. International law should say that they are international actors. They are the subjects of international law. That is the international law what we are speaking about. It governs the relation between national governments and intergovernment organizations. What all relation that will govern? It will govern the relation between the national governments. That is government of India, government of Pakistan, government of US and everything. And intergovernmental organization. There will be intergovernmental organization that will be working for the country and countries, and that will be also dealt with under the international law. And the areas of international law will include treaty law, law of sea, international criminal law, law of war, international humanitarian law and human rights law. Also, the subdivision that we can bring to international law include treaty law. That is bilateral treaty, multilateral treaty. There will be treaty between two countries. Between India and Germany, that will be a treaty between two countries. That is bilateral treaties. Then there will be multilateral treaties. That is several countries will be engaged. Then law of sea. What all rules are to be followed in taking products from one country to another through sea. Then international criminal law. If any violation to human right occurs, any violation to laws of war occurs, what is to be dealt with? That also will be dealt with under criminal law. Then laws of war, what are standards, what are norms are to be followed in when there arose a war. Then human rights, every country, every citizen has got some human rights that is to be followed internationally. And when some country violates that human rights, that will be violative of the treaties that they have been entered into, and that will be dealt with by the international law. That these are the subjects, that is the areas that will be controlled by the international law. And the role of international law. What is the role of international law? The operation of an international law starts where the operation of domestic law ends. That is, in between a country, what law operates? That is the domestic law. And in that circumference, only domestic law appears. And the area of operation of international law starts where that domestic law ends. Between that country, domestic law will be applied. And beyond that limit, what applies is international law. It will regulate. What is the role? First role that played by international law is it will regulate the behavior of states and other entities in their relation with each other at any given time. First role that is played by international law is international law will prescribe. It will prescribe the behavior of the state. State is the subject of interest. State means a sovereign state, just like India, US and everything. So, how a state is to behave and other entities, that is related entities, in their relation with each other. When they transact between themselves, between the countries or between country and individual, how they behave. What is the behavior? What is standards that they have to keep up? That all will be dealt with under the international law. That is the role that is international law plays in their relation. It will govern the way that the country interact with one another. How? What is the path? What is the norms that they have to follow in their interaction? It will set how and when an international government like United Nations intervenes in how a government interacts with its citizens or other peoples within a state. It will deals in specific circumstances how a country has to interact with other country or an government, an international government. Just for example, if the UN, how the UN has to interact with a particular sect, that will be decided in the international law. For example, if we take India's relation with another country such as Germany or United States, it will be governed by the international law through agreements. There will be some treaties that is concluded between the India and US. And whatever trade transaction or any other transaction that will be carried afterwards between India and US, that will be dealt with under the norms that is prescribed under that treaty. That treaty is a source of international law. That treaty itself is an international law. When India as a sovereign state and the US as a sovereign state enters in an agreement, a bilateral or a multilateral agreement, that agreement, that treaty, that will be termed as when two countries, two sovereign states enter into an agreement, that will be treaty. That will become a treaty. When they signs and ratifies it, our government, when the diplomat signs the agreement and our government ratifies the same, it will become the treaty between the nation. And when afterwards, whenever India and US enters in any transaction coming under the conditions of this treaty, what both the countries have to follow is that they have first to look into the conditions that is signed under the treaty, and they have to follow every conditions that is agreed by the nation. That is the role of international law. Now we have to understand the term international law. International law, there are only two terms that is inside this term, that is international and law. Law, I told you, that is, it's a body of rules that is recognized by a society for the smooth governance of the society. Then international, that is outside the country, the relation between two countries. The term international law, it is coined by English philosopher Jeremy Bentham, and he defined international law as a collection of rules governing relation between states. What he said is, Jeremy Bentham said is, international law is a collection of rules. It's a collection of rules. That is a combination of rules, several rules. Governing. What is the purpose? It will govern the relation between the states. States means It's not what we are telling about states of India, that is Kerala, Karnataka, and like that. It's not like that. It's whenever we say states under international law, it's not simple states as you understood. It is a state, sovereign state. It's a country, it's a nation. That is India, Germany, USA, UK, and like that. So, it's international law is a collection of rules governing the relation. It will govern the relation between states, that is sovereign states, that is sovereign countries. That is what international law governs. So, the term is coined by Jeremy Bentham, and what he says about international law, it's the simplest definition for international law. That is, it is a collection of rules governing relation between the sovereign states. The well-established definition for international law is governed by Oppenheim. As per Oppenheim, law of nation or international law is the name for the body of customary and conventional rules which are considered legally binding by civilized states in their relation with each other. That is, this definition is given in the year 1905. After this, in their 9th edition, this definition has been revised. So first we have to get originally what is this definition? That is law of nation. That is the international law. It is the name. It is a name given to certain rules for the body of. It's a name given to certain body of rules of customary and conventional rules. That means it includes both customary rules and conventional rules which are considered legally binding. These rules, even if it is a customary law or a conventional law, it is considered legally binding. These rules are considered legally binding. Legally binding means it is legally enforceable. That is, whenever a violation occurs, there is a remedy. Somebody will interfere and there is a remedy. That is legally binding. When we enter into a contract, what is the basic of a contract? When a person put forward an offer and another accepts that proposal, it will become a promise. Every promise and every set of promises forming consideration for each other will become an agreement, right? So, when there is an offer, acceptance, and it will turn into promise, and when that promise gets a consideration, it will become an agreement, and that agreement, when it gets the legal sanctity, legal enforceability, it will become legally binding. That is, if any violation occurs, there is a redressal. So, these conventional rules and regulations, these are legally binding by the civilized states. That is, when we take about states, sovereign states, it is binding upon the states, which all states have entered into that rule, that entered into or ratified to that agreement, that will be binding upon them, and in which area? In their relation with each other. If I have concluded a treaty with US, that treaty will be binding between every relation between India and US. If diplomats of India and US enter into an agreement, enter into a treaty, that will be binding between India and US in altogether every of their relations. So what is the definition of Oppenheim? The law of nation or international law is the name for the body of customary or conventional rules. So we have to split it. It's a law of nation and it is the name given to the body of customary or conventional rule. It can be customary and it can be also conventional rules which are considered legally binding. That rules and regulations should be legally binding. Between whom? Between the civilized relation. So, it is the rules are legally binding between the civilized states, civilized countries, in what? In their relation with each other, in their relation, in what all transaction they are entering into, these rules are applicable since they have agreed upon it. It's just like an contract. And this definition in 1905, when it was released, it got support, but later it was criticized under several grounds. Which were they? Criticism of Oppenheim's definition to international law. What was it? Omission of international organization. When you look into that definition, you can see that it is legally binding by civilized states in their relation. So, Oppenheim is talking only about the binding agreements by civilized states. Only states, only sovereign states. No place, no part by the international organization. As you know, nowadays, whatever universal applicable decisions are taking, it is taken by international organization like the UN, the ICJ, International Court of Justice, criminal forums and everything. So, in definition, in international law definition, ample place is to be given to international organizations also. Second point of criticism. So, first point is, it is recognized that not only the states but also international organizations have the rights and duties under the international law, even though they may not have all rights and duties. Even so, just like individual or a country, international organizations may not have all the rights. But just like international sovereign states, these international organizations like UN has also got certain rights and obligations. So, these organizations should also be made a part of international law. Then, civilized states. There are states which have not been considered as a civilized states, but they are part of international law. They are talking only about the civilized states. First definition is only about the civilized state. But when we take world as a all, world as a family, it includes not only civilized states but also uncivilized states also. So, we can't exclude them from the definition of international law. Then, there is omission of general rule of law. What this definition says, it is solely about the body of customary and conventional rules, not of the basic general rules of law that is to be considered when we deciding any dispute related, any dispute, if we take contract, family matters or anything. There are certain rules that is followed from age-old times that is to be followed in deciding a case. That is, say for example, fair trial. Each and every person is expected to have free trial, fair trial. That is certain. If I come with clean hands before a law, I am expected to have a fair trial. Then when judge decide a case, he has to give decision based on equity, good conscience and everything. So, these are the general rules of law that is to be applied. Here the other party, odi altrum partem, that is, here the other party. Whenever a decision is to be made, we have to hear. When there is a dispute between A and B, whether a court can decide the case only looking into the version of A or B. He has to hear, he has to decide the case after hearing both A and B. These are the fair rules of practice that is to be followed in deciding a case. So, whenever any international worldwide dispute arises, every party should be heard and all the rules that is to be taken in fair trial that is to be given part in the international law. Then, international law lacks. It is a static definition. Law changes. Just like, say for example, 20 years back, when we take into Indian law, there was no cyber law, there was no specific IT act or anything like that. When the world changed, when we technologically grow, we have to increase the area of operation of law also. Just like that, when a nation develops, it means that world is also developing. So whenever there arises a change in the world, there should be change in the international law also. Something is to be observed to the law. That is why we say law is not static, it is changing. Law always changes. So all change must be adopted to law. So Oppenheim's definition to law is that it is the name of body of customary or conventional rules which are considered legally binding by civilized states in their relation with each other. It is criticized on several grounds, like that definition is concerned only about civilized states. Only states are the subject of the international law under this definition, but international organizations and other entities should be brought into the sphere of international law. And in this definition, they are talking only about civilized states. When we take world as a large, it is to be included, every type of state is to be included in the definition, and this definition lacks the inclusion of general rules of practice, legal practice that is to be included in a law. Then last part is, law is not static, it will change from day to day, and that is to be incorporated to the definition. Then after several years, in their 9th edition, Oppenheim's definition has been changed and it has been included certain other things. Now what Oppenheim's definition says is, international law is the body of rules which are legally binding on states in their intercourse with each other. Just like the former definition that he has given, it is a body of rules. Every law is a body of rules which are legally binding. Just like the earlier definition, it's legally binding on states. Whichever state is a party to that treaty, to that agreement, it's binding on that state. That is, it's enforceable if any violation occurs. In their intercourse with each other, that is, whenever there is a transaction, that is intercourse with each other, that is, whenever a state enters into a relation, a trade relation or any relation with other, and they are supposed to follow the norms they have agreed upon. That is the first part. So first part of the definition contains, it's a law, it's a body of rules which are legally binding. It is legally enforceable between the states in their intercourse with each other. That is, in their relation. Intercourse means it is in their relation with each other. These rules are primarily those which govern the relation of states. Primarily relation, what the international law primarily concerned, that is first, at the first instance, it will be concerned of the relation of the states only. That is, two parts are contained in this international law. That is, it will regulate the relation between the states, one country and the other. And it is not exclusive, it also includes, but the states are not the only subjects of international law. The definition, second definition itself says only the sovereign states are not the subjects of international law, but international organization and to some extent. So subjects, the new definition has elaborately states that the definition includes the subject to which international law address. The subjects to which international law address does not circumfere it to only the state but also to international organizations like UN and others, and to some extent individuals may also be subjects of the international law on the rights conferred and duties imposed by the international law. So, first part of the definition says it is a body of rules which are legally binding on the states in their intercourse. Intercourse means relation with each other. And the second part says, primarily the law is concerned of the states, sovereign states, two states, that is two countries. And the definition states it's not only the states that is the subject. It also addresses international organization, and to some extent, in some circumstances, international law address also the individuals too. So the subjects of international law can be states, it can be individuals, it can also be international organizations. So there are two parts in the open aims definition. First part is, it is a body of rules which are legally binding. So first part says it's a body of rules, it's a law which are legally binding. It's legally binding between the states, legally enforceable between the states, and in their intercourse with each other, in their relation with each other. That is the first part says. Then second part says, it is primarily concerned with the relation of states, but also not only the states, but international organizations also comes under, and in certain circumstances, other individuals are also made the subject of international law. Then, what is the importance of international law? When we take age-old history, in almost every circumstances, in almost every age, this international law existed. When we take the concept of family or one world, when we take that concept from ancient days, in the olden days, the concept was not introduced. But whenever there arose an interaction between countries, mainly through trade, that is why, whenever there arose an interaction between different sovereign entities, sovereign states, there was international law. It existed from age-old times. And mainly this international law, as a rule, it existed in international trade, and at the time, secondly at the time of war, and in another treaties also. For every state, that it has to, when the state has to develop, say and in this age of this globalization, liberalization and privatization, everything, the state has to, the whole world, what is this globalization? All world is brought under one umbrella. So, in each and every trade, one state has definitely to deal with, to transact with another state. And in that sphere, international law has got much importance. So, when we talk about the importance of international law, we can say that international law as such is not in this form, but in several other forms. This international law existed in olden times also. Whenever states enter into trade with one another, there existed international law. Say for example, it may not be in the term as international law. There will be some norms and standards that will be prescribed between a relation between the states when they interact. And when times of war also, they followed some what we call standards for conducting war. And in this globalization era, the part played by international law is much. And when we take the term international law, it is to be clearly differentiated from private international law or conflict of laws. That is, private international law, it is largely depend on municipal law, and it will deal with international law only when a foreign element is involved. That is like family matters, marriage, etc. And it is to be differentiated from the term international committee. International committee means it is not what we tell about international law is international law, it is legally binding between the states. There is a bondage between the state, and when the state violate that terms, it is punishable. And when they take into international committee, it means state will adopt between, whenever they transact with each other, they will they will show some courtesy. But that courtesy or standards or norms, that doesn't have any legal binding. It doesn't have any legal binding. It's non-binding norms. But they show that respect as a courtesy. That is the international committee. So the term international law is to be clearly distinguished from conflict of law or private international law. That is, private international law, it is concerning the domestic things, but in domestic affairs there will be an element of foreign. Foreign element will be prevailing in deciding domestic matters. That will be the conflict of law or private international law. And with regard to international committee, it's certain courtesy that is followed by states in their relation, but that they are not legally binding. But international laws are legally binding between the states. Then, principles of general international law. This is the vast area that we will elaborately deal with in another session. And for this topic analysis, we have to complete it. What are the principles of general international law? There are certain Latin terms that you have to be familiar with. That is the ex consensa advenit vinculum. That is principle of consent. I told you this international law, that is basic of international law is contract, obligation. That is, parties to a contract is to be abide by the by the terms of the contract. When we give consent, when somebody puts forward an offer, or if I am making an offer, I am giving my consent and I am seeking other person's consent too. And if I agree upon that consent, I have to I have to stand by the promises that I have made. That is, if I give consent to an agreement, that consent will give rise to an obligation. That is the principle of consent. That is ex consensum advenit vinculum. That is, the consent gives rise to obligation. Whenever we give consent to something, we are giving consent to something, we are entering into an obligation, and that obligation is to be made up. Second principle is pacta sunt servanda. That is, agreement must be kept, performed. When we enter into an obligation, when we enter into an agreement, that agreement must be performed. It must be, when an agreement is made and condition is made, it is to be performed. Then second principle is principle of unity and continuity and state. We should believe in the unity and continuity of the state. Then the principle of supremacy of international law over domestic law. If we are making a party to an international law, we have to be in mind that this international law will always have a dominant position over the domestic law. Whatever law we take into consideration, our Consumer Protection Act. What is the basis for our Consumer Protection Act of 1986? The basic for the principle behind the Consumer Protection Act is the Bill of Rights that is adopted in US, and that Bill of Rights have been adopted as consumer rights by the UN. When the United Nations adopted this Bill of Rights of US as consumer rights for world at a large, and when we entered into a treaty with the UN, we became a party, and under that guidelines that is given by UN for this protection of consumer rights, we have incorporated in our law a Consumer Protection Act. So, that Consumer Protection Act that is prevailing in India, that is 1986 Consumer Protection Act, that will be having all the norms that is laid down under the UN consumer rights, and we can't make any standard that is against what is prescribed in the consumer laws, that is guidelines that is laid down by UN. That is the principle of supremacy of international law over domestic law. The domestic law will always be subsidiary to international law. So, international law will prevail over the domestic law. The next principle is principle of pacta tertisni nocentni prosent. That is, treaties do not create either obligation or rights for third parties without their consent. That is, when a treaty is entered into, just like you just think of contract. When a contract is entered between A and B, there will be certain rights that will be given to A, and he will also supposed to make certain obligation. At the same time, B, he is also have to with him there is also certain obligation, and he has got certain rights. And a third party C, third party C can't seek any rights or obligation from the agreement that is concluded between A and B. That is what we call privity of contract. When there is an agreement between two nations, there is a treaty between two nations, a stranger cannot avail a right, a third person cannot avail a right from this treaty. That is, he is a stranger to that treaty and he has not given his consent to that treaty. The basic for this treaty obligation is giving consent, giving ratification. If we are entering into a treaty, our government has to ratify that treaty. Only by ratifying that, what means? We are giving consent to that treaty. Only when we are giving consent, we are obliged to have some duties, and only when giving consent, we will get some rights. And that rights or obligation, it's not availing to a third state without their consent. Then next point is the principle of good faith. That is the general principle of law. That is, everything should be made under good faith, for goodness, for bona fide, that is goodness. It governs a commitment to the international obligation. Every obligations under international law comes under the norm of good faith. That is done under goodwill, goodness towards the world. So, the general principles of international law are: one is the consent that gives rise to obligation. Second is agreement must be kept, it must be performed. And the third is unity and continuity of states. And the fourth one is the principle of supremacy of international law over domestic law. Then next point is, that is, treaties do not create either obligation or rights for third states without their consent. We can't compel a state to enter into a treaty. It is their consent. Only with their consent that one state is entering into a treaty. That consent plays an important part. Consent, first point is consent will give rise to obligation. When we consent, there arises the obligation. And without a party's consent, without a state's consent, we can't make that state obliged. Then last point is the principle of good faith. Good faith means for every relation, there is the principle of good faith. They are the principles of general international law, and we will give a session over that in detail